Good morning, students. Today we're going to start chapter number 4, that is alternative centers of power. Well, as you can understand with the topic itself, alternative centers of power. Now, after World War II, as being political science student, we know that the world was divided into two blocks. The world became bipolar, where at the one side it was USSR, on the another side it was USA. So it is those were the powers, those were the centers of power, the USA bloc and the USSR bloc. And after even disintegration of USSR, it was only sole superpower, it was America. So apart from America, apart from that Russia, USSR, which were the important institutions or organizations, associations which were formed after World War II, and they played their role in the world politics. That's what we're going to discuss in this chapter. So, alternative centers of power, alternative of whom? Of the important blocks such as USA and USSR. Apart from them, because they were the already the world was divided into bipolar. It was a bipolar world after World War II. It became bipolar world. So apart from them, which were the important institutions that were formed in this time period? So in this chapter, we're gonna discuss about European Union, that is EU, one of the very important organization in today's world politics. We're gonna understand when the EU was formed, when European Union was formed, what were the reasons, which were the important countries, and what role it played in the world politics. Then we're going to discuss about ASEAN, that is Association of Southeast Asian Nations. This is also a very important organization, very important association of different countries, which played its role in the world politics. So how coming of the smaller countries, you know, and how can they also make a kind of block or group, and through that they can just also play role in the world politics. So that's what this chapter is all about. So first topic of our chapter is European Union. Now, as we discussed that world was divided into two parts after World War II. So in World War First or in World War II, it was the Europe which faced the crisis in a much worse manner. Because World War First में आप इन्वॉल्वमेंट अगर लो या वर्ल्ड वॉर सेकंड में इन्वॉल्वमेंट लो, ज्यादातर कंट्रीज कौन सी थी? यूरोपियन कंट्रीज थी. तो वहां पे डिस्ट्रक्शन बहुत बड़े मास लेवल पर डिस्ट्रक्शन हुआ था. तो एक क्वेश्चन यूरोप के लिए भी ये था वर्ल्ड वॉर सेकंड के बाद में कि व्हाट नेक्स्ट, लाइक शुड वी कीप ऑन कंटिन्यूइंग फाइटिंग विद ईच अदर. चाहे आप देखो वर्ल्ड वॉर फर्स्ट का एग्जांपल हो या वर्ल्ड वॉर सेकंड का एग्जांपल हो, जर्मनी वर्सेस फ्रांस एक तरीके से फिर वो वर्ल्ड वॉर में कन्वर्ट हो गया. जर्मनी वर्सेस फ्रांस second maybe second world war maybe, and that was converted into world war later on. So through this, it was also after World War II, it was also a question that what Europe should do next. Should it follow a kind of policies where all the countries can live peacefully, or otherwise the same policies which they were following earlier by fighting and just wanting to take control of the resources. So European Union, as the Second World War came to an end, many Europe's leaders grappled with the question of Europe. And what was the question? Which kind of policies should we follow? जैसे अभी हम डिस्कस कर रहे थे, यूरोप में आप वर्ल्ड वॉर फर्स्ट का एग्जांपल है, वर्ल्ड वॉर सेकंड का एग्जांपल है. दोनों में यूरोपियन कंट्री और यूरोप में मास लेवल पर डिस्ट्रक्शन हुआ, और दोनों वर्ल्ड वॉर में जो रीजन था वो रीजन यूरोपियन कंट्रीज के आपस के डिस्प्यूट से एक तरीके से रीजन थे. वहां से फिर वो जो है जस्ट शेप्ड इनटू दैट वर्ल्ड वॉर, है ना. वर्ल्ड वॉर सेकंड से पहले तो फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर को क्या बोलते थे? द ग्रेट वॉर. वो ग्रेट वॉर जिसको हम वर्ल्ड वॉर फर्स्ट बोल रहे हैं, आज वर्ल्ड वॉर सेकंड बोल रहे हैं, उसने यूरोप को बिल्कुल शैटर कर दिया. तो सेकंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के बाद में व्हेन इट एंडेड, द क्वेश्चन केम टू द यूरोपियन लीडर्स दैट व्हाट नेक्स्ट. द क्वेश्चन ऑफ यूरोप, should Europe be allowed to revert to its old rivalries? जो पहले की राइवलरीज थी आपस के बीच में, क्या अब करना चाहिए हमें? उनको भुला देना चाहिए और भी रिकंस्ट्रक्टेड ऑन क्या हम उनको कंटिन्यू करें या उनको मतलब रिवर्ट करें, और रिकंस्ट्रक्टेड ऑन प्रिंसिपल्स एंड इंस्टीट्यूशन दैट वुड कंट्रीब्यूट टू अ पॉजिटिव कंसेप्शन ऑफ इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस. सो नाउ टू क्वेश्चंस or two options were there in the minds of the European leaders or in front of the European countries, that now what should we do next? अब हमें next क्या करना है? तो ये दोनों क्वेश्चन से क्या हम जो whether we should revert the old rivalries, or we should follow some new principles and a kind of institutions where we live in a peaceful or in a positive manner. Now, the Second World War shattered many of the assumptions and structures on which European states had based their relations. In 1945, the European states confronted the ruin of their economies, because as you know that the Second World War started in 1939 and ended in 1945 with the fall of Japan, earlier with the fall of Germany. So in 1945 European states के सामने एक ये सबसे important चीज थी कि as we were discussing, much of the shattered or much of the ruins were there in Europe itself of the World War II और even World War First में भी यही हुआ था. तो यूरोपियन स्टेट्स के सामने उनकी इकोनॉमी को लेकर क्राइसिस थी. इकोनॉमी मतलब बिल्कुल वॉर जब होती है बड़े लेवल पे, इस लेवल पे जो वॉर होती है, इकोनॉमी ऑब्वियसली कोलैप्स करती है. वो जो डिस्ट्रक्शन हुआ था, दैट डिस्ट्रक्शन एंड ऑफ द assumptions and structures on which Europe had been founded. So what should we do next? Destructions everywhere, the collapse of the economy. Now, European integration after 1945 was aided by Cold War. So as World War II ended, the world became bipolar and the Cold War was started, which was your first chapter, the Cold War. And in that chapter, we have discussed that how world was divided into two groups, and between those two groups, the USA group and the USSR group, the indirect war, the proxy war between the two big countries, two big rivalries. So that time period or this kind of confrontation is known as Cold War. So this Cold War also aided with in the integration of the European countries or European integration. It was a kind of starting of the formation of European Union. We can understand how कैसे जो कोल्ड वॉर था उसने भी यूरोपियन यूनियन को बनाने में अपना रोल प्ले किया था. कैसे कि सबसे पहले तो अमेरिका ने एक मार्शल प्लान नाम का एक प्लान जो है वो लॉन्च किया था, मतलब एक प्लान जो है वो दिया था. ये जो मार्शल प्लान था, ये मार्शल प्लान जॉर्ज सी मार्शल, हु वाज यूएस सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट, जो कि यूएस सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट थे, और उस ड्यूरेशन में हैरी एस ट्रूमन, हु वाज प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ यूएसए, जो यूएसए के प्रेसिडेंट थे उस ड्यूरेशन में, और उनके सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट, जैसे हमारे एक्सटर्नल अफेयर मिनिस्टर होते हैं एक तरीके से, वैसे वहां पे सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट होता है. So that secretary of state was George C. Marshall, who gave a particular plan, a particular programs, and just because of that, those programs were known as Marshall Plan. इसलिए उसको मार्शल प्लान के नाम से जाना गया. अब इस मार्शल प्लान में क्या था कि constructing the Europe, because mass destruction was there in Europe. So to construct the Europe again, construct in sense वो एक उस चीज से बाहर निकालना, उससे जो बैकड्रॉप हुआ तो उससे बाहर निकालने के लिए यूरोप को, मेनली द वेस्टर्न यूरोपियन कंट्रीज, बिकॉज दे वर फॉलोइंग द आइडियोलॉजी ऑफ कैपिटलिज्म एंड टू मेक इट्स प्रेजेंस थ्रू द ग्लोब एंड टू शो दैट अमेरिका इज सुपर पावर. अमेरिका वाज आल्सो ट्राइंग टू कंसोलिडेट इट्स पोजीशन. वो भी एक रीजन था कि मार्शल प्लान जो है वो लाया गया. सो यूएस, द मार्शल प्लान वाज ब्रॉट by George C. Marshall, who was Secretary of State under Truman government in USA. So US also created a new collective security structure in this time period under NATO. NATO, that was North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This was also created after World War II and during the Cold War under the Marshall Plan. The Organization for European Economic Cooperation, that was OEEC, that was also established in 1948. And it was established to channel aid to the Western European states. Now, it became a forum where the Western European states began to cooperate. सबसे पहले एक शुरुआत, starting point हमने देखा with the Marshall Plan, and Americans had their own interest also. So this Marshall Plan or Cold War also played its role in the integration of European Union, or in the like that peace or tranquility or a kind of an association. है ना? Initially it was Western European Association because Eastern की तरफ USSR का एक ब्लॉक हावी था, they were like following the socialism. बट जब डिसइंटीग्रेशन हो गया यूएसएसआर का 1991 में, तो उसके बाद में ही यूरोपियन यूनियन बनी, जिसमें ईस्टर्न यूरोपियन कंट्रीज भी बहुत सारी उस वेस्टर्न ब्लॉक में इंक्लूड हुई, और दैट्स हाउ द यूरोपियन यूनियन, जिसको हम कहते हैं आज ईयू, वो 1992 में स्टैब्लिश हुई। तो सबसे पहले शुरुआत एक तरीके से मार्शल प्लान से, बाद में ओईसी बनी, जो हम देख रहे हैं, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन फॉर यूरोपियन इकोनॉमिक कॉपरेशन, दैट हाउ कैन इकोनॉमिक कॉपरेशन बी देयर अमंग द यूरोपियन कंट्रीज, सो दैट जो पहले की राइवलरीज भुला के अब एक तरीके से पीसफुली, और मतलब वहां पे एक चीज वो जो है पीस और ट्रैंक्विलिटी मेंटेन हो सके। नाउ it became a forum where European states, और मेनली वेस्टर्न यूरोपियन स्टेट्स, क्योंकि अभी हमने देखा ना कोल्ड वॉर टाइम पीरियड में तो क्या था, यूरोप भी इट वाज डिवाइडेड बिटवीन लाइक ईस्टर्न ब्लॉक एंड वेस्टर्न ब्लॉक. Mainly most of the western European countries were in favor of capitalism. They were following the ideology of capitalism. They were under USA's leadership, whereas eastern European countries were under USSR following socialism. So now next what happened, the Council of Europe, it established in 1949. It was another step forward in political cooperation. First step OEEC, next step the Council of Europe. It was formed in 1949. And for political cooperation, political consensus, unity, this council was made. The process of economic integration of European capitalist countries proceeded step by step. So step by step, mainly the capitalist countries, है ना, हम यहाँ पे क्या बात करें, capitalist countries की, और वो countries which were in the US bloc, because they were following the capitalism, because the other bloc was following the socialism, because USSR was also there. So two block kind of system was there. तो यूरोपियन यूनियन में जो वेस्टर्न यूरोपियन कंट्रीज है, उनका ये जो ब्लॉक, मतलब जो एसोसिएशन बन रही थी शुरुआत में, जो अलग अलग ऑर्गेनाइजेशन बने, हमने ओईसी देखा, द काउंसिल ऑफ यूरोप देखा, है ना, तो ये स्टेप बाय स्टेप वेस्टर्न यूरोपियन कंट्रीज पहले मिले, और बाद में अल्टीमेटली जाके क्या हुआ, जब 91 में डिसइंटीग्रेशन हो गया तो वो यूरोपियन यूनियन बन गया. तो हियर आल्सो यू कैन सी द टाइमलाइन, एवरीवन, दिस इज द टाइमलाइन ऑफ यूरोपियन यूनियन इंटीग्रेशन. So first started with 1951 in April. 6 West European countries, mainly France, West Germany. So Germany was also divided between West and East Germany. Italy, Belgium, and Netherlands and Luxembourg. They signed which treaty? The Treaty of Paris. And that's how establishing the European coal and steel community. So this was a kind of first step, initial step in the formation of that European integration. कि सबसे पहले क्या बनी, ECSC, जो हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं 1951 में. 57 में EEC, यूरोपियन इकोनॉमिक कम्युनिटी, देन दैट्स हाउ द प्रोसेस वेंट ऑन. फिर इस तरीके से प्रोसेस चलती रही, और अल्टीमेटली जो है 1992 को, आफ्टर द डिसइंटीग्रेशन ऑफ USSR, द ट्रीटी ऑफ मैस्ट्रिक्ट, that Maastricht it is in नीदरलैंड में ट्रीटी साइन की गई थी, वहां पे ट्रीटी ऑफ मैस्ट्रिक्ट, और वहां पे जाके फॉर्मली एक तरीके से यूरोपियन यूनियन एस्टैब्लिश हो गई, इसको आज हम जानते हैं यूरोपियन यूनियन, EU. In short we say it is the abbreviation. Now what next? So European Economic Community in 1957, this process acquired a political dimension with the creation of European Parliament. So later on European Parliament वहां पे establish हुई, and the collapse of Soviet bloc put Europe on a fast track and resulted in establishing the European Union in 1992. So that's how this all process went up, कि ये सारी कंट्रीज जो है एक दूसरे से मिल रही थी, एसोसिएशन फॉर्म हुई, और अल्टीमेटली जाके वो EU बना. EU से पहले की हिस्ट्री में भी बहुत सारी चीजें हुई थी, क्योंकि वर्ल्ड वाज डिवाइडेड, बाइपोलर. यूरोप वाज आल्सो डिवाइडेड बिटवीन ईस्टर्न यूरोप एंड वेस्टर्न यूरोप. mainly Eastern European countries following USSR footsteps, Western one following USA's footsteps, and that's how they all that's how the association was in making, the formation was in making, and the process was started. Now, European Union has evolved over time from an economic union to an increasingly political one. आज के टाइम में यूरोपियन यूनियन की स्ट्रेंथ बहुत जबरदस्त स्ट्रेंथ है यूरोपियन यूनियन की इसकी अपनी एक पार्लियामेंट है यूरोपियन यूनियन की here you can see a flag of also European Union where the gold stars are there है ना these are in numbers 12 gold stars and these 12 stars the 12 is traditionally the symbol of perfection completeness and unity so that's why they adopted this kind of flag for them now so it became politically also very important however the attempts to have a constitution for the EU it has failed over and again and however in spite of that it has its own flag anthem founding date also currency that euro currency it also has some form of common foreign and security policy and there the NATO is famous like a military organization also very important military organization of the world and it's dealing with other nations the European Union has tried to expand areas of cooperation while acquiring new members so over time it included different members also in the European Union here you can see the older members as well as the newer members so mainly the older members were from the western side west of the Europe whereas the new members were from the eastern side eastern Europe and after the disintegration that's how the European Union uh, formation or integration was done now next the power and the strength of the European Union. Now, currently, EU has economic, political, and diplomatic and military influence also throughout the world. EU is world's second biggest economy. Combinedly, we are talking about. So, if we talk about European Union, so if we combinedly all the members of the European countries, if we combine their GDP together, we can see nearly $17 trillion economy. It was in 2016, it just went up also. It is nearly 18 to 19 trillion dollar economies. You can just understand the strength of European Union. So it was just next to United States of America. Its currency, that is the euro, it also is a threat to the dominance of the US dollar. Because as far as the international currency is considered, US dollar is considered as the stable currency and powerful currency. But next to it, it is euro. So allowing it more assertive. Now, this much strength, if any association has, it obviously has the political power also. It obviously has that power where it can leverage that power in negotiation or in any other matter. So allowing it to be more assertive in trade disputes with US and China, its economic power gives its influence over its closest neighbors as well as in Asia and Africa. It also functions as an important bloc in international economic organizations such as WTO, that is World Trade Organization. So in the international organization also it has its strength, its power. So the EU also has political and diplomatic influence. How? One member of the EU, that is France, it holds the Security Council permanent membership. And you know that in United Nations, in the Security Council is one of the very important organ of the United Nations. And Security Council, the permanent members have the veto power. And the France, which is in EU, European Union, is also member of Security Council and as a permanent member. Now, this has enabled the EU to influence even US policies, such as the current position of US in Iran's nuclear program. So many times, being political science student, you must be aware that currently also the Iran nuclear programs are in news, where Americans are like totally against the policies followed by Iran, whereas European Union trying to have a negotiation, trying to become a mediator between the US and Iran. So sometimes it also influences EU as combined influences the US policies also. So that is the big strength of EU, European Union. Next, militarily also, the EU combined armed forces are the second largest in the world. its total spending is on defense is second after the US. So that's how you can understand the importance of EU, European Union. And this question can be asked from you. The strength of the European Union politically, militarily, economically. So these are the strength politically, economically, and militarily. Britain and France, they both are nuclear countries, and they have nearly 550 nuclear warheads. Okay. Now, as far as Britain is concerned, after Brexit, they started the process of getting out of the European Union for their own political reasons. So Britain is somehow just a partial way. It is part of European Union, but it has its own currency in many different affairs. It has got out of that European Union. But however, यूरोपियन यूनियन में ब्रिटेन हो, फ्रांस हो, इनके पास न्यूक्लियर आर्सेनल्स हैं 550 के करीब. तो यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड द इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ यूरोपियन यूनियन थ्रू दिस वे. नाउ ब्रिटेन्स प्राइम मिनिस्टर टोनी ब्लेयर वाज अमेरिकाज पार्टनर इन इराक इन्वेजन. हम अब कॉन्ट्रास्ट की बात कर रहे हैं. यूरोपियन यूनियन में हम कॉन्ट्रास्ट कैसे देख सकते हैं? ब्रिटेन के प्राइम मिनिस्टर जो थे टोनी ब्लेयर, हु वाज पार्टनर इन इराक इन्वेजन, but many of the EU's members made up the US-led coalition of willing. They joined the US-led coalition there in Iraq invasion, but Germany, France, and a few other states of European Union, they opposed the American policy. So there is also a deep-seated Euro skepticism. Like here you can see this cartoon is given to you, and this cartoon appeared in 2003 when the European Union's initiative to draft a common constitution for all. And this cartoon is representing, here you can see the flag of the EU, and this ship is representing that Titanic ship which just sank in the ocean. So that's how this particular program failed, the failure of having a combined constitution for Europe. So that's how this cartoon is representing that failure of having the combined a common constitution. Now, Margaret Thatcher's kept UK, United Kingdom, out of European market. Denmark and Sweden have registered the Maastricht Treaty. So these are the contrasting things. It is not like all the countries are agree on the same kind of policies. There is contrast also in European Union, in Europe also. But somehow through this whole points which we have discussed, we can understand the importance and the strength politically, socially, and that economically, militarily power of the European Union. So that's how everyone we have discussed about the European Union and how after World War II, the formation of European Union, the initiation of European Union was started step by step. And after 1992, when the disintegration of USSR happened, the European Union was made. So in this topic, in this video, we will discuss only about European Union. And in the next topic, that is about ASEAN, we're going to discuss further about another association, that is ASEAN Association of Southeast Asian Nation. How this association also politically, economically, very powerful. It has that strength. Individually, the members of the ASEAN may not have that much strength, but combinedly, they have that much strength. They have that political leverage, economic leverage also over big countries also. So that's what we're going to discuss in our next class. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.